Okay.
Hi, Andrew. Hi, Rob. How are you guys?
Morning, morning, Yoav. Morning, Rob. And good morning, everybody. Thank you very much for joining. It looks like we've got a widespread of attendees across mainland Europe, which is really, really good. So thank you very much for taking the time, and hopefully we can educate you in things around securing your SBC. So without further ado, really, I'd like to welcome you and my colleagues to this webinar. It's around how secure is your SBC. The subject matter really is a continuation of what Matt Hurst, our colleague, presented at Commsverse in exploring how vulnerable an SBC could be, but more importantly, the threats in today's market around the modern day hacking techniques that are used. So we're going to explore a little bit further how Ribbon can protect, how particularly other SBCs may be vulnerable to these threats. And we're going to demonstrate really into the depths of these threats and how we can do that through a demonstration. So I'd like to welcome Rob Fitter, who's senior pre-sales here at Ribbon. I've got Frederick with me as well, who's the subject matter expert on analytics. We've also got Marco, who's our expert around call recording and how all this fits in together. So without further ado, I'm going to hand over to Rob. And if you have any questions throughout the, oh, sorry, I would say hand over to Rob. I've got one more thing to say. So if you've got any more questions, please let us know. I would like to personally invite all of you to the EMEA Partner Summit, which is being held in Lisbon this year, September 13th and 14th. It'll be a very informative session around developments roadmap, in particular demonstrations from subject matter experts around all our products. We have lots of different partners attending, from Microsoft, we have Cisco, we have Zoom, all on the case, really trying to show how they integrate within the Ribbon Solutions portfolio, and more importantly, to try and discuss how we can look at the new business and moving how we can gain new business in the years to come. So you're more than welcome. Please register on our website. All you have to do is fund your flights there. Everything else is paid for. So it's a really good opportunity to come and meet the Ribbon team and expand your knowledge a bit further. So as I was saying, without further ado, I'm going to hand straight over to Rob, my colleague, who will take you on to the next part of this journey.
Andrew, thank you. Just one more thing. You mentioned the summit. I'm going to place the registration link in the Q&A. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Right. Yeah. Well, thank you, Andrew. So yeah, as Andrew said, this essentially is, a follow-on from my colleague Matt Hurst's presentation at Commsverse a couple of weeks ago. And just as a brief introduction to this, I guess the first thing is use cases. Why would you deploy an SBC in the enterprise infrastructure? And we know that SBCs provide wealth of functionality in terms of interconnecting disparate systems. Solving the challenges of slightly different interpretations of the SIP protocol, providing interworking between encrypted and non-encrypted links. So that's, I guess, the interoperability role of the SBC. It can be expanded as well to provide functionality in terms of voice routing and increase the resiliency of your solution by catering for multiple WAN services and also multiple logical voice SIP connections. But then really, the key thing that we're talking about today is the security aspect of the voice infrastructure. So, in terms of how the SBC protects the enterprise infrastructure from external threats, at the data plane, but right up through the levels into once you get into an established voice session, how can we actually put in an extra layer of security from that perspective? And the thing is, voice security is critically important, and the environment's changed over over the last few years. We've had a big change in terms of the architectures that are generally deployed with the move into the cloud world. So we've had a shift almost entirely from PSTN to IP transport, and we now have a lot of applications and UCaaS services all based in the cloud. And then add to that as well, we've got the mobile aspect to it as well. Many different devices, all interconnected over that same IP network. So what that means is that the attack surface for the unified communication, the voice infrastructure, has increased massively. And rather than being able to just have create a if you like, a hardened shell around the enterprise environment, you've now got far more points where the users and the different systems in the architecture are then exposed to different threats. So the attack surface has increased massively. But you might say, okay, well, but what is really the risk here? And that's something that we're going to explore a little bit further. So is it significant or not? But there are lots of different threats out there from voice, more SIP specifically, in terms of SIP protocol for voice over IP. You've got a basic functions at the data plane in terms of things like denial of service attacks, which you have your firewall infrastructure, next generation firewalls, and the SBCs themselves protecting at that level, at that low level of the data plane. But what we see now, or have been for some time, is that there are many other higher level attacks using voice, and specifically SIP-based voice traffic, where bad actors are using lots of different techniques to either create revenue or gather data, or just effectively implement different types of denial of service attacks for enterprises and actually for service providers as well. And we've had this conversation with quite a lot of partners and customers, and quite often the response that we get is, well, we don't really see much about let's say toll fraud or some of these different social engineering attacks in the voice space. We see lots of articles in the IT press about lots of data and various infiltrations or exfiltration of data that's been successfully achieved on the enterprise customers. But the thing is, this is actually a real significant problem. Talking to some of my colleagues in the US, they pointed me to the CFCA. It's basically an association that we're following in terms of their research, and this is over 100 service providers and other organisations that are part of this association. But if we look at some of the figures associated with some of these social engineering attacks and other scams from a voice perspective, you can see that there's some significant dollar values attached to that. So if we pick a few of these out on this list, for example, Wangiri, short call durations, $2.23 billion back in 2021 from when this data was released. So it is a significant problem, and service providers are monitoring this, and as far as possible working to mitigate it, and where possible prosecute, take the bad actors to task where that's possible. In a lot of cases it isn't. I think that really is part of the issue, because a lot of these are actually genuine voice calls. If you look at it from a voice call perspective, there's nothing wrong with it. If an enterprise is subject to, say, a dial through attack, then they're normal genuine voice calls. It's just that the enterprise has then it's cost them a significant dollar value in call charges. Same thing for the service provider. They've legitimately handled that traffic. So it's a genuine problem. And then looking at it a bit further, look at some other research, which was a research survey of IT leaders in the voice space. How many of them, how important do you see voice fraud to your overall security strategy? And over 80% of the people in that survey said that they believe that's important. Conversely, less than 50% of them actually have any sort of strategy to actually address it. So it's probably not a good position to be in.
And I think, Rob, just very quickly, sorry, I think very quickly on that slide, what's really quite interesting to yourselves as obviously partners is that this opens up a conversation into the enterprises you're dealing with. And it's certainly something that's really quite prevalent, that yes, they would like to have a strategy, but quite honestly, some of them don't know which direction or even how to implement that strategy. So you as advisors really do have a role to go in there and suggest, look, there is a threat, we can help you.
Absolutely. But furthermore, yeah, it's a growing trend. Sort of a bit of research from the CFCA basically shows that globally, and then from the members of the survey, individually, they're seeing that the volume of these types of attacks is increasing. So that's really setting the scene as an introduction to what we can do with the Ribbon Analytics platform. So what Ribbon Analytics does is it captures data from the SBCs and other devices potentially in your network, and then applies machine learning capabilities to that to enable you to identify bad actors, and then actually to take some mitigation actions on those identified bad actions. I mean, that's one side of it. There's also a wealth of operational use cases as well in terms of how it can help you to manage and monitor your network. But at this point, I'm going to hand over to Frederick, who's our subject matter expert on the analytics platform, to take you into a bit more detail in terms of how analytics works and some specific use cases that help you to actually understand how we can mitigate these attacks, identify and mitigate them.
Thank you, Rob. So hopefully you can see my my screen. Can you confirm you can see my screen? You can hear me? We good on the logistics?
Yep, we have it, Frederick.
Excellent. Excellent. So yes. So the next part of this session will be to talk a little bit more about Ribbon Analytics, and also to run a demo, so a quick demo to really illustrate the flexibility and the power of this tool. So I'm going to start for the first 5 minutes with a few slides just to explain a little bit the scope of analytics, what it can do, and then we've got a demo system which I will briefly will show you. So if we start with what analytics does, so it will collect information from the devices of the network, and we're going to focus today on the SBC in particular, whatever flavor of that SBC is. And this SBC will send a lot of information to analytics, particularly information related to voice traffic, and that information is in the shape of call detail records. So the SBC has a lot of information within the CDRs to help analytics actually understand what traffic patterns are going on through the network. Now, one very useful tool of analytics is that it is also capable of adding extra information within the CDRs before the CDRs are analyzed. And the type of information which is very useful, particularly for security, is that instead of potentially having statistics based on an SBC or a trunk group, you may want to have statistics based on a customer name, like the actual enterprise, or you may want to have statistics based not just on volumetrics of call, but actually how much cost or how much price is associated to this call. So we've got an ability in analytics to upload CSV files, which will be able to add additional field, and this will be used later on by analytics to be able to detect anomalies in the traffic pattern. The second aspect of analytics as well is that it can be configured so that when it detects an anomaly, then it will automatically send a mitigation action to the network. And the most common mitigation action it takes typically is to block either a calling number or to block a call number. So that can be configured to be done automatically. However, typically when you install that rule, you may want first to feel comfortable that actually you are not blocking legitimate calls. So what we see in the market, our customer doing is that very often they would apply those rules, but with manual trigger to start with for the first few weeks maybe. And then when there is a high level of confidence that actually that rule is actually catching the illegitimate calls, then it can be automated. So that's the overall view of analytics. Now, to give now a specific example, the example of Wangiri has already been mentioned by Rob, but also I'm going to go into a little bit more detail in explaining exactly how analytics is capable of doing that detection and of launching that that mitigation. So to illustrate this, let's talk a little bit more about Wangiri. So Wangiri is a use case where typically the fraudster will generate a high level of call attempt and with very short ringing duration. Why? Because they don't want the customer to be able to, or the subscriber or the employee of the enterprise to be able to actually answer the call. They want them to miss the call. Why? Because they know that a certain percentage of people who miss calls, maybe 3%, 4% of them, will actually call back to see who called them. What they don't know is that they're going to call back a premium number or a very expensive number, and then the fraudster will try to make the conversation last longer, to have more revenues being generated. So this case of Wangiri, actually, we have come across it. I would say in most parts of the world, that's something which is quite common. So the way analytics can do this and can detect this and can mitigate this, you have a network of different devices. In our example, let's say three SBCs. They generate call detail records. You can configure analytics to, for every calling number, I put it in blue, the entity, for every calling number to calculate every 5 minutes certain KPIs. So the KPI in that example would be number of call attempts and answer Caesar ratio as an example. And then I will show you in the demo how you can set up the threshold. You decide would detect this is a Wangiri type of call. So for the purpose of the demo, I want to make sure this is the condition is triggered. So we're going to put very low level. Like 2 call attempts in the last 5 minutes with an answer Caesar ratio less than 10%, for instance. Now, what analytics will do is that it will automatically detect which are those calling numbers who are suspected to be fraudster, and it will generate an incident. The incident will result in a notification being sent to the administrator. So that could be an SNMP trap, that could be an email being sent, that could be an SMS being sent, and then optionally, in the mitigation profile, you will decide whether you want the mitigation action to be sent automatically or not. If you decide the mitigation action to be sent automatically, a script will be sent to the 3 SBCs, and every SBC will have as an instruction to put that calling number into some sort of denial list. So automatically then subsequent calls coming from that specific calling number will be blocked. So that's the overall mechanism, and a very flexible mechanism analytics has to detect fraud use cases. Okay, so we're going to go into the demo soon. So you can create many different what we call incident detectors in analytics, and they can run also in parallel. So in our lab, we have defined a certain number of use cases, and we won't have time today to go through all of those use cases, but that's something we could do as a follow-up session with some of you if you are interested. But what is interesting, or in terms of showing you the flexibility of the solution, is that what I put here in blue is to explain that the entity you want to monitor will change depending on the use cases you want to catch. So typically it could be the calling number, as the example of Wangiri, but it could be call number, or it could be an ingress trunk group or an egress trunk group, or it could be a destination, a prefix, a country of origin, a country of destination, or it could be a specific enterprise. So all those values, and I give a few examples in blue here, are possible with analytics. And then what I put in green is what sort of metrics, statistic, KPI you want to be monitoring. So when we talk about Wangiri type of call, typically you want to look at the call volume, the number of call attempts, and the answer Caesar ratio, right? But for other type of fraud cases, you may want to look at the call duration instead, or you may want to look at how many distinct B numbers are being called, and so on and so forth. So all that flexibility is available in analytics. Okay. Now, if we have time,
Frederick, doing great. Just I want to stop you with 2 or 3 questions.
Sure.
And we can decide. I think part of it is for Rob, part of it is for Andrew, and some are for you. So let's decide how we take it and move on. So first of all, and thank you everyone for asking the questions. Again, the button Q&A top screen, please keep on sending those. First of all, how is analytics priced? And again, we can decide, we can answer it now or a bit later. So how is analytics priced is the first one. Is this a standalone or can it be run as a one-to-many? This is not a good one. How flexible are the dashboards? That's another one.
Yeah. Okay, so do you want me to start briefly answering? Yeah.
So let's start with the first one. Can I write scripts to monitor things like a call spend threshold as well?
Sorry, call spend threshold. Yes.
Yep.
So the actually this is, for instance, I can show you that to you today. That the case 5, where you can create threshold not just based on call volume, but actually the cost of a call or the price or the profit you're making on different calls based on different entities. So we've got use cases, for instance, where we can calculate the price of the cost per ingress trunk group and then per egress trunk group, and then we've got a matrix showing potentially the profit for any interaction or integration or combination of ingress/egress trunk group, again as an example. So yes, definitely, thanks to the CDR data enrichment, you can upload things which are similar to rating tables into analytics, and that's how we can have thresholds based on cost as opposed to based on volume.
So, and just to expand on that, just quickly, Frederick, I think what you can say as well is that if a spend threshold is reached, an alert can be activated either to the partner or the customer, etc., by email, etc., saying, look, you've hit a threshold, please advise.
Yes. Every time an incident is being generated, an email, as I said, can be sent, or an SMS, and also an SNMP trap would be generated.
Okay, good. Next one. Can this also be used for support purposes?
So this analytics tool really gives whoever is using it a lot of visibility of exactly what's happening in the network. So here I really focus the presentation on fraud and fraud detection, fraud management. Typically, you can also use this tool for any type of troubleshooting because analytics keep that information, CDRs, which are very important for fraud management, but also other type of information. We've got SIP ladder diagrams, SIP traces, all that information is kept in analytics database and can be kept for weeks on end, months on end. So in terms of support, if you have a customer complaining that, for instance, the QoS wasn't good at 3 days ago between 1 and 2, you actually have within the analytics database, you actually have already all the information you need to do that support and troubleshooting.
Good. And last one, and we'll get back to your presentation. Can this give me quality report for Teams to the handset?
Yes. So actually, in one of the previous slides, if you see here, we have done the integration of MS Teams into analytics. So you can register. You put the tenant of a specific enterprise into analytics, and then you register analytics with that tenant into the MS Teams cloud, and then the MS Teams cloud will send the call detail record happening within the MS Teams cloud to analytics, and those can be quite rich in terms of information they have. So that integration has already been done into analytics.
Okay, beautiful. So again, please keep on sending those. If we don't have time during the session, we will follow up afterwards. Thank you.
Okay, excellent. So actually, I'm going to move to the demo now. I can potentially show you 3 use cases. We may have time only for one case, but let's start with the first case, which is the most, I would say, comprehensive, and hopefully will explain how all this is being integrated into analytics. So the first demo I'm going to show you, we're going to have 2 SBCs in our network sending CDRs. Those CDRs are going to try to detect the Wangiri use case, but with an enhancement, and that enhancement, it will do it only for specific calling number. Just as an illustration of the type of flexibility we have into analytics. So I've created a very quick CSV file to say, okay, any number with this prefix have to be monitored. Those numbers with that prefix don't need to be monitored, and so on and so forth. So typically in real life, this spreadsheet could be hundreds of entries long, but this is an example where we are capable of matching information based on the longest prefix and data. So analytics is going to do that, and then every 5 minutes, for every single one of those numbers needed to be monitored, it will create some statistics, and we have defined a rule set here which says, okay, for every one of those CLI numbers, look at the number of call attempts, look at the number, the level of answer-Caesar ratio, and then if there is an incident, send a mitigation to both SBCs for each of them to say block the calling number. So what does it look like on analytics? So to do that, I'm going to bring up the analytics GUI. Okay, hopefully you can see this. So this is an analytic system we've got in one of our lab. This is typically the landing page. So I'm going to have a look at the incident detector. So this is use cases which have been currently implemented in analytics. So I want to see the list of all the detector. Okay, incident detector. So analytics is going to show you all the incident detector which we have already configured, and you can see that the first one I'm going to show you is this one, the high risk CLI detector. So what does the detector looks like into analytics? If I edit it, you can see that I decide that I'm going to do a calculation every 5 minutes, and every 5 minutes I'm going to look at the calling number. Actually, it's a combination of calling number and calling country code. And this is where I define the threshold, and this is where I define which KPIs have to be monitored. So I can change this very easily through that GUI. So at the moment, it's going to look at the number of call attempts and the answer-Caesar ratio. Number of call attempts 2, to be sure that it will be triggered, but in reality, it could be 2,000, it could be much higher, and answer-Caesar ratio less than 10%. If I want to change those values, I just do this. But what I can do here, I can add additional values. So I could say, actually, I would also want to have a third threshold to be detected as well. And that third threshold, I've got a pull down list of threshold I could decide to have if I wanted to. For instance, the reading time being less than maybe 2 seconds. Yeah, so that's the type of configuration I can do in analytics. You can see that it could be any threshold, any entity. So then I can run it. And if I want to see if some incident have been detected, I go to the list of incidents. I selected the incident for the last 3 hours, and I can see that indeed I had a number of potential incidents which have been triggered by analytics. And the one incident we just talked about, the type, it was in the edit, was calling number test. So I can see that this specific country, which is the US, with a specific calling number, is suspected to creating a Wangiri call. And at the moment, the status is active. That means that I haven't taken any action yet against that. You can see that this incident here is closed. It's because I ran a test this morning to make sure everything was working, and I closed the incident. So typically what I would want to do from here is to check it's not a false positive. So I can see the date of when the incident happened and the incident type. And what is very interesting is that Analytics GUI gives me what the rule was. So if you remember, the rule was number of call attempts more than 2, answer ratio less than 10%. But what is very interesting is that I actually have what the values were. So I can check whether the threshold was crossed just about, or whether it was significantly crossed. So that helped me to understand what's going on. And I could go further than that. So you can see there were 3 call attempts during those 5 minutes. If I click on this, automatically Analytics will filter, go into its database, apply all the filters necessary in terms of the time here, the 5 minutes, and also in terms of those entities. I wanted the high risk to be true, and the country code and the calling number. And it will give me automatically the 3 CDRs related to that fraud being detected. So here you can see I've got the 3 CDRs, and then from then on I could do all sort of further analysis, troubleshooting if I wanted to. Here I've just clicked on this icon, and that gives me the zip-ladder diagram for this specific call, and so on and so forth. So I can do all that navigation, and after that, if I feel confident that it is indeed a case of a fraud, I may want to manually mitigate the this fraud. So to do the mitigation, all I have to do, I click here on mitigate, and it gives me a pull-down menu of what are the mitigation action I want to do. So at the moment, it has been configured to say, okay, either you ignore the incident because I realized that wasn't a big issue, or I just block the calling number. So if I click on block the calling number, mitigate, now my number is going to be automatically mitigated. You can see the mitigation status. That means the mitigation was actually sent. You can see the state being active. I could have let me check.
I guess, Frederick, one of the things about this is you have it's one thing to imagine if you just have a single SBC as your entry point to the network, but a global network with tens of SBCs, then this saves you a massive amount of time and effort in terms of implementing mitigation action across the whole network.
Yeah, so everything is centralized in this with analytics. So yeah, that you've got a single point mitigation status. Yeah, you've got a single point to actually be able to monitor this. So if I look at my mitigation, so this is a mitigation I have just done. I can go into the details of exactly what happened. I can see that 2 scripts have been launched for each of those SBC, so SBC1, SBC2. This is the name of the script. So you can see this script was blocking the calling number. And then the status. You can see that now the status has been successful. So now I know that on my network, this calling number will not be able to generate any more calls. And to complete this demo, it may well be that a day later or a few hours later, I realize that this is not an issue anymore for whatever reason. I can revert it. So I can revert that mitigation and say, okay, now allow my network to accept call from this calling number. All I have to do is to revert. Okay. Yes. Okay. So now the mitigation action will be revert. So hopefully that helps you, understand a little bit what is the admin experience in terms of setting up a fraud detection and analyzing whether or not a fraud is indeed to be mitigated. I don't know how long I have. I probably don't have much longer. But what I can say as well, an important point is that with analytics, I can also, to decide whether it is a real mitigation action or not. I've got all sorts of dashboards, which are available to me to do some further analysis. So that example of a dashboard here, I decided to have a chart with a top 50 high-risk calling number. So those calling number who made the most call, let's say for the last hour. And then if I want to investigate this one, which made quite a lot of calls, I do a filter. Okay, and then you will see all the other charts are going to be automatically updated to tell me, yeah, for this specific number which you chose here, this is actually what happened in the last day in terms of answer-ceasar ratio, in terms of number of call attempts of that number, and this is all the individual CDRs as well. So a lot of navigation. I'll be happy to do much longer demos to you if you are interested. I probably have to pause here and maybe hand over.
So just very quickly. So if there is an interest in looking into this in depth, as Frederick suggested, we're more than happy to run some very specific, tailored demonstrations, or even the in-depth type tailoring of this analytics platform for you. So please just let us know if that's of interest, and we can set that up. So thank you very much, Frederick, for your time. And hang about for some questions later on. I know there's been quite a few popping in. So Yoav, we're on to Marco, I believe.
Yeah, but just one more thing. I think that we left one question open. How is it all priced? I think this one goes for you, Andrew, or for Rob.
It's quite simple in the way that it's priced. We price the solution on the modules because we split up into modules, and again we can talk in depth about that. But the way it's really priced is around call events per day. So it's because it's monitoring the activity of those events, we price it out call events. And again, if you want to go more in depth about the pricing, please reach out to me. I'll more than happily go through the matrix we have for you. Okay.
All righty then, Marco. I think that the stage is yours. I think that you need to unmute, Marco.
Can you hear me now?
Now it's perfect. Go ahead.
Okay, great. And can you see the presentation, correct?
Yes, we can.
Okay, great. Thank you, everybody. Thank you to our friends of Ribbon for this opportunity of being here, and to you all that are attending this presentation. Our idea is, I saw a very interesting slide before that was where the SBC is a central point where all application and added services can run on top of this, and even reporting and analytics, as we just heard, are running on top of that. So what I want to present you is a couple of other applications that it can run on top of Ribbon SBC thanks to its flexibility. And I will try to keep some focus on security, because today we are talking about security and how it can be some way associated on what we heard so far. But the main point is that we are talking about we work with Ribbon since several years. All the products I'm going to talk about are certified with Ribbons and are on the price list of Ribbon. So we are talking about something that is easy to pick up and activate. The other important thing from my side is that we have been moving and changing our approach together with Ribbon, and we are approaching this solution exactly in the same way. So what we are talking about are call center, recorder, UC application, on top of the SBC. they can be available both in a, let's say, SaaS approach, so no installation on customer side, or they can be available in what we call it on-prem. Now on-prem is the customer Azure mainly, and we are talking about applications that are running typically with Zoom and Teams. So we are definitely in the cloud. And the other thing is that maybe we'll address a possible question is the licensing approach that can be still with a perpetual license approach or even with a pay-per-use approach. As I mean, everything is moving through this direction. The more we move in the cloud, the more the customers are asking for this approach. As my colleague said before, please post questions if you want. You can interrupt me at any time. I don't want to make a boring presentation, so I'm just giving you some points. So what are we talking about? We are talking about a suite of UC application, and I would like to introduce you three main pillars that can be, interesting in this environment. That are the cloud contact center, the compliance recorder, and what we call core analytics. And as you can imagine, this is going in parallel. On what we just heard in 5 minutes ago. The main point, so we are focusing on this. All these applications are certified for Microsoft Teams. We are not that many in the world to have these certifications, and this certification is very important because, as I always say, when we had our application running on-prem, then you can just fix things for the customer to run. If everything is in cloud and we are working with a centralized, unique PBX, that is Microsoft Teams in this case, we need the tools, we need everything to be sure that it works. So certification is not just a matter of a stamp, is very important. So the first information that I want to give you is that what we are talking about now are certified on one side with the Ribbon SBC, and on the other side with Teams. And as we said before, as Frederick said before, even SBC, even Ribbon is working with certifications with Microsoft and Teams. So this is the environment we are talking about. So I don't want to bore you with many details on what is a contact center. My idea is to give you just the information that you can run on top of Ribbon SBC, this kind of application. We are talking about contact center, so we need to manage multi-channel. So voice is just a starting point, but nowadays is no more the only one. We manage with a unified routing engine, even chats and emails. Chats are getting more and more important because, as you can see, we integrated WhatsApp. We understood that WhatsApp is started to be, a non-business tool, but it's commonly used even for business. So we had to integrate that, and we see that it's a very important feature that customers are asking for. So at the end of the story, you can contact your contact center via voice and WhatsApp, for example, or email, but this is more traditional. WhatsApp is very, interesting from the market point of view. Once again, what does a contact center is quite, I think, a common knowledge. I want to outline that we have all the pillars and the pieces to manage, from the IVR, the automated attendant, and then the routing with advanced and skill-based algorithms, up to the operator console that will have a pop-up with the CRM. Typically in a call center, that's the typical scenario. Obviously, you need, and the more we move in the cloud, the more we need tools to monitor. This is some way a common reason for all the things we are saying today. So even supervisor console tools are useful and needed to track on what's happening. So we have real-time reports on arrived calls, managed calls, logged agents, stuff like that. We are not inventing something specific, but this is a must-have. The more we move in the cloud. So that is very important. I would like to give you a little more detail on what is the agent point of view, because we saw that if we are working in Teams environment, having an attendant console, agent console, call it how you want, to be integrated, embedded in Teams is a plus. Why? Because the agent have a single tool, have a single phone, and does not need many windows or tools to be used. And that is the main point. That I want you to notice is that the application is running inside Teams, and the phone is Teams. So what happens is that when the call arrives, you have all the typical call center information. So you have the list of incoming calls, you have the calls in queue, some statistics, you have the integration with the directory, and you can make login, logout, all the typical call center features. But the point is that, for example, when call arrives, you see this is the pop-up that Teams opens when a call is arriving. So what happens is that the user experience is Teams. We are not forcing this kind of user to have a different user experience. And once again, the more we move the application far from the customer, the more the user experience is important, because that's the only thing they see, and that's the only interaction they have with the system. So in this approach, the idea is to give all the typical feature of the contact center inside the Teams console. Obviously, this may not cover all the needs or the ideas of our customers. So we still have the typical web-based agent console. As you can see, it's a little bit light color, but the main difference is that here you have a phone, so you have full control. The previous one is running inside the phone, that's Teams. This one is including a phone. It's a SIP phone, at the end of the story. So, and this is available and possible thanks to the flexibility of the SBC ribbon. So we are working directly with, routing calls and managing calls directly with the SBC. And as you can see, the features and functionalities are still the same. We are not inventing something particular in this case. But the point is that customer can have a contact center with nothing at all, just a web page or Teams. This is just at a glance, the architecture. What I want to outline is that, as you can see, the central point is still the SBC, and the integration is quite simple. What I want you to know is that this application, that's MIDA, can be MIDA SaaS or can be in customer Azures. So we can decide and understand, depending on the situation, on the customer requirements, which is the best solution, as I said at the beginning. Then obviously these applications are communicating with Teams, Zoom, or depending on the environment, for presence and stuff like that. But I don't want to bore you with this. With these slides. Just some points to understand how we approach the security. It's not a problem. It's a standard issue, and that must be managed day by day. That's why we have been certified ISO 27000, and Microsoft required this certification for us. This means that every row of codes is must be written in a specific way with specific processes. As you know, this is a guarantee for the security of the software that you provide and the way it runs. I know it may be obvious, but all the protocols that we use to interact with the external parts of the of the infrastructure are secure protocols. And let me say that our approach is to have not virtual machine but virtual appliance. That means no one can access the virtual machine. It's all web-based, so every access is tracked. We have audits, and once again, it's nothing specific new, but we have to take care of security of our applications. Okay, regarding, if you're talking about the contact center, that became the more interesting after pandemic, and that's why we are working a lot with Ribbon, because everything can be moved in the cloud, and that can help. Remote working and even hybrid scenarios. What if I can say something is that everything is talking about Teams, everyone is talking about going in the cloud, but this process is not a finger snap. It needs time. So what we see is that giving the possibility, as we saw in the previous architecture, to manage both the old one, the legacy one, and the new one, Teams, Zoom, whatever it is an important plus because it helps moving smoothly from the legacy to Teams. Finally, then I mean, even all these applications are generating reports and data. They're very important, and they're now available with the database views and with Power BI integration. That's typical tool used in Microsoft environment. And I would say that it can be in the next future even some way used with the tools that you already saw some minutes ago with Ribbon Analytics. So let's go with the other pillar that is even more linked to security, that's recording. We are talking about a voice recording traditionally, but nowadays even on video recording. We have customer banks where, I mean, now meetings are made, for example, with customer using Teams. And so they're talking, but they're also sharing documents and I mean, slides, stuff like that. So the content of the meeting, of the Teams meeting, must be recorded too. So first of all, no more only voice, but even video and contents. I just want to outline one thing because from a technical point of view, recording is just the smallest part of all the application. And I mean, professional recording is needs much more. That's what I mean, there are several features, but it's not just a matter of recording as we are probably doing now with, I mean, Teams is now recording this session, but that is not a professional recorder or compliance recorder. Compliance recording means that it has to provide tools and functionalities to prove that you are working in a specific process in a specific way. And as you probably know, you have to be compliant with MiFID II for all the financial customers and GDPR for almost everyone. So I always say that because when we are talking about recorders in Teams environment, the first point is that, okay, but Teams is already recording. Okay, it's just making the first step. I don't want to say that it's good or bad. That's a different thing. So we are talking about compliance and professional recording. Just a glance at the architecture. So once again, the central point is the SBC. And so we are integrated with Ribbon. One point is also important. Because it's also a possible point of, I mean, for you and for your customer, a point where we can provide interesting solution. If customer is moving from legacy to Teams, then probably we will have the SBC, and then we will catch all the calls going through the SBC, and so we can record them and have everything compliant with the environment. One point that we are something less than 20 in the world with this certification, that's compliance recording for Teams, means that we are anyway losing the Teams to Teams call because they are running at a higher level, they are in the cloud, they're in Microsoft. And this can be done with a specific integration. That's what we did. And so we can provide a unique recording solution that's managing all the calls through the SBC and all the calls, even the Teams to Teams. And as I always say, the first things that the customer says that, okay, but I need to record the calls with the customer, with the end customer, so the PSTN calls. That's almost true. So this can be done once again with a solution linked to the SBC. But the more we are using Teams, the more, for example, the financial expert will set a meeting with Teams with a customer. And that call will be Teams to Teams, will not pass through the SBC. So once again, this is getting more important, and the customer has compliance problems because the customer, the bank, whatever it is going to say, I will record all business calls. If they're not passing through the SBC, they need to manage that. So what I want you to know is that we have even this module, and that's completely compatible with all the environment that we are talking about. So once again, obviously, all the certification and 27000 is very important, and all the MiFID II and GDPR compliance are very important. And obviously, recording is even more. We have to pay even more attention. So we have specific tools and algorithms for anti-tamper. So we have to grant the integrity of files, of recorded files, and for encryption, obviously, that is even more important in financial environments. Yeah, I think that an interesting point for you is what I told you, that teams to teams is a huge opportunity. And the other thing is that it's very flexible, because the point is that you can even have the recorder running, let's say in Mida SaaS or in the customer SaaS, wherever it is. But one point for regulation is that recorded messages must stay typically in the same country where the service is provided. So let's say an Italian bank should manage have recorded messages in Italy. So the possibility to manage the file transfer, and it's a specific process for long-term retention. We can manage that even to push it via SFTP, or even, for example, in other Azure Blob or even Amazon storages. I think the final point that I think can be interesting for you is that we can, as I said before, we can manage recorder with different sources with a single one. As Frederick said, for the analytics, having a single point of management of analysis, it's very important. So in this case, and it's quite typical in banks to have different technologies. They have some on Cisco, and some is going teams with the SBC, with Ribbon SBC. So there are probably mixed environment, and the possibility to have a single solution is, you can understand, it's much easier to manage, much cheaper even to manage, because we have just one solution. And we have very, very important references on these scenarios, with covering from Cisco to Skype for Business, Teams itself, and even BT Trade, Turrets. So we can manage several sources. Just a final slide. The point is that all the applications have their own statistics, their own reports, their own CDRs. We have three main pillars. That obviously there are statistics related to contact center, statistic on, let's say, the traffic and what we call accounting, what's called accounting some years ago, and then the compliance recording module. What I want you to know is that these are still available inside the application, so you can query with the web interface and download the CSV file, but they are now available even in with database views, so the customer can use. We provide Power BI ready to use reports, but the customer can pick up that reports and change and whatever he wants. That's the flexibility is very important nowadays, even because the meaning of a single data can change depending on the customer. So, or he may want to drill down some specific fields or information. So up to the customer to do it, but he's very free to do that. And as I said before, probably in the next future, an idea is to, since these can be another source. I saw a slide from Frederick that has many sources, Cisco and stuff like that. The SBC itself, obviously, that can be an additional source in the next future. Yeah, just a final point on the analytics and reporting we have on the recorder. That is not, we are not talking about troubleshooting. These are very, very important because of the compliance, because every bank, every financial institute should apply, for example, to MiFID II. And let me make an example. He says, I declare that I will not keep recorded messages older than 5 years. He has to demonstrate that at any time. So he needs tools to do that. So reporting, all the reports on recording is very important, not because of troubleshooting. Recording is some way a tool that you use in emergency, in finance, or in critical environments, in security environments. So when you need the recorded message, you have to find it quickly. That's the point. So it's some way a troubleshooting tool. The point is that it must be compliant to several processes and rules. So, and you have to demonstrate, you customer, you have to demonstrate that you are compliant with this. So another typical approach is the call match. That is, I must grant that I'm recording only the calls that should be recorded, no one more and no one less. So you have to cross the information. So once again, we are talking about analytics, cross the information between the recorder and the PBX or the SBC in this case.
Thank you, Marco.
Okay. That's all for me. If you have question, or if you, I mean, we can catch even in a separate session.
Yeah, thank you, Marco. So yeah, we're just about at time, so we need to up. So yeah, I mean, just in conclusion, from the analytics perspective, I hope that you've got a good flavour now of the kind of capabilities that you can achieve with the analytics platform. There are a lot of use cases. This is a thing that that Frederick started to explain. It is essentially a toolkit. We've got some predefined applications on analytics. You can always look at those as a starting point. Once you start to look at the data from your specific network, then you can customize it and tailor it to see exactly the information that you need, and you can build custom applications using the scripting within analytics. So put a link up here so you can see the main product page. But I think the key message is really just please get in touch with us, and we can drill down into some more detail. So just high level contact details, either Andrew or myself. From a ribbon perspective, contact details there for Marco in relation to the MEDA solutions.
But I think, Rob, just to add to that, realistically, we're at a point within the marketplace where there's an appetite for this, because there's real concern. And Rob and I do see enterprises on a regular basis, and we talk about fraud, and we do see these enterprises start to think, oh, hang on a second, or more to the point, some of them have already experienced some element of fraud. So it's a very relevant conversation to be having with your customers. More importantly, it can create new revenue streams for you. So that's something that's quite interesting to your superiors. But more importantly, it's a solution out there that you guys can use from a support perspective as well. So it really kind of ticks all the boxes. And I think, like Rob said, if you need any more information, if you'd like some demonstrations, please reach out to us. We'd more than happily help you along and get it done. So really, thank you very much for your time today. If there are any questions, Yoav, that we haven't answered.
Yeah, so Andrew, just two more quick things. Again, all of you, thank you for asking the question. Check your Q&A. You have two links in there. One for the EMEA Partner Summit. Please register. The second one is for our LinkedIn group. Very active. You can stay up to date. Just follow us. And one last question is for MEDA. How is the license working? This one is for you, Marco.
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yeah, got you.
Okay, great. That's a typical question. As I said in first slides, I mean, licensing is based for the call center. I mean, first of all, it can be perpetual license or pay-per-use license. So if it's in SaaS, obviously it's pay-per-use. If it's dedicated instance in customer Azure, it can be both. It can be defined with the customer. So they're both available. Just to give you some rough point on how applications are licensed, call center is obviously licensed in the number of agents and on the number of, let's say, calls and that you need to manage at the same time. I say calls, but there are contacts at the end of the story. There's a license if you want to move from only voice to even to multi-channel license. Even supervisor can have a license on that. Let me say that, and this can be once again perpetual or on a monthly basis. I think that the most interesting thing is that we are not working on named agents. That makes a huge difference with other solutions, because in a call center you may have probably 3 people working at the same place, at the same console, and in other application you have to pay for 3 agents. In MEDA you have to pay for 1, so that makes a huge difference. And on the recorded side, once again, we are not working on the simultaneous calls that are recorded. But in terms of traffic, we would like to call it Erlang, but I know that this is a strange word that's no more known. So let's talk about recorded hours. That's much easier. That's the same thing, but with a different approach. So if you record, you pay. If you don't record, you don't pay. This is obviously the pay-per-use approach. On the CapEx approach, it's you try to understand which is the traffic that you really need to record, and then you pay for that, not for the number of phones. For example, we have banks with 2,000 phones, and they just have a small recording service that can be activated from anyone. If you had to pay for each possible user, it gets impossible. And even this is something that is very interesting on the pricing model, because the other competitors works generally on the seat approach.
Okay, Rocco, thank you very much.
Thank you, guys.
Andrew, Frederick, Rob, anything to add?
No, just thanks for everyone's time, and yeah, please reach out, get in touch.
Okay, good. So thank you, speakers. Thank you, partners, and see you on our next session. We'll be in touch.
Thank you.
Or hopefully at the Ribbon Partner Conference.
Please.
Indeed. Okay,
Thank you all.
so
Thanks,
bye
everyone.
for now and have a good day.